Welcome to this new video series called Thinking Like an Engineer. What got me started thinking about this whole video series and really just making more videos about development is that I have some friends that have recently gotten their first junior jobs or are starting to learn how to code and freelance a little bit. And what I noticed, one of the biggest hurdles that they experienced wasn't necessarily knowing what syntax to write or knowing sort of the technical features of the language or even being able to recite facts about a given framework or anything like that. The biggest issue is that when they were presented in a real scenario, not necessarily a quiz or, a leak code test or something like that, but as soon as they were presented with a real problem, they got that deer in the headlights look and just kind of froze and stared at, empty editor and just, had a panic attack probably, maybe in some cases. And because of that, what, as they talked to me about that experience and, you know, would run different problems by me, I just noticed, yeah, it wasn't a technical problem. It was more getting in the mindset and being confident and comfortable with the thought process of going from here's a problem, here's a ticket in some cases in jobs, but here's a list of stuff to solve, go and do it. How do you break that down and break it into smaller manageable chunks and then actually produce the code that solves it? Because that's really, I think, what gets a lot of us into coding is that, rush of endorphins from solving a problem. And when things are going great, it's awesome. And then whenever you're freezing like that, it feels like the most overwhelming job in the world. So this video series is here to help you and anyone you know and would like to share the video with to think more like an engineer and how to break these down. So this is something I've had, fortunately, a lot of practice with. I've been doing this for 10 years professionally, not necessarily good, but at least I was getting paid for it. So 10 years professionally, and then probably almost 10 years before that, just hacking away on little blogs and side projects and game stuff that, was fun in high school. So I've had a lot of experience with this, so a lot of it comes second nature to me, but I know that especially people who are making a career transition or just don't have the confidence of being, growing up in IRC chat rooms and hacking away on, spare Linux boxes, like those things, with enough time, it builds a second nature to this sort of thing. But until you get there, it is like working any other muscle. It feels really hard. So we're going to start on that today. And the first project is one that's near and dear to my heart. It's one that is based out of a need that came up in my personal life. This isn't anything work related. But my wife is a type 1 diabetic, which there's a lot of things that go along with that. Feel free to Google it, and WebMD or your medical search engine of choice will fill in way more details than you ever cared to know about. But the thing that usually scares me the most is that you can get hypoglycemia, which is basically your pancreas doesn't produce the hormone to regulate your blood sugar in either direction. And so sometimes if you take too much insulin, your blood sugar drops, and that can be even worse in the short run than high blood sugar. So anyway, my wife is very fortunate that she gets to use a Dexcom continuous glucose monitor. And I'm giving you way more detail. I'll generalize this in just a sec. But what got me started on this is that she gets live updates every 5 minutes about what her blood sugar is. And on my app, I can see that, which is great. But sometimes, for some reason, the app just doesn't work. Like I'll get a notification like 15 minutes after I should have gotten one, which can be a little bit scary if, it's trending one way or another. So this is a real problem, is that I want to make sure I get notified as soon as possible in case the app just doesn't work or my internet's busted, since that comes over, their app notifications. So I wanted to build like a backup. I wanted to build another system that could access that same data and then send me a text message, because the text message is going to be, a different sort of network than, over my internet connection. Or if I have bad internet, but I still get a little cell reception, I can still get that notification even then. So this is really, something that'll help with my peace of mind. And I think it's also like a good, test of really, the programming skills and piecing different elements together, because we're going to be using a few different third-party services. We're going to be using APIs. And like I said, you can generalize this. Like this specific use case with Dexcom may not be something that works for you, but you could treat, like a check for your homepage to see whether your server's down and it's returning an error code, and then have that text message to you, or have, something else emailed to you. It's probably going to be a different API, but the same principles apply. And really, more than any of the details, any of the technologies or anything else, I'm really wanting to focus on how to think about a problem. The syntax, you can figure out the syntax, pretty easily in comparison. The hard part is thinking it through. So with that said, let's start diving into this. One of the first things I do whenever I'm starting a new project is write out the logical flow of things, not necessarily the details about, I'm going to connect to this system or that API or anything like that, but just the logical way that things should flow. I find that really helps me, break it down into different steps, and then the implementation details can sort of flow out of that about, how to exactly implement something. But especially if I'm stuck, breaking it down this way helps me quite a bit. So I'll often have my notes app on my Mac open, or just Notepad on a PC, just to type something out. Or in this case where I've got a new fresh repo, I'm just going to write it in the README and say that I'm going to connect to the Dexcom service and send text message alerts based on blood sugar readings. So that's enough to get me started. I mean, if this were, 15 other points about, different acceptance criteria, here's how to, here's all the other things to keep in mind, you could keep doing this indefinitely, but like this is enough to get started and start breaking down the project into something a little bit more manageable and something that I can reason with versus some big, huge idea. So with this, I have to figure out, how to connect to Dexcom. Point 0, how to type better. Point 2, how to send text message alerts. I should probably also figure out what is a low blood sugar threshold, because I'm going to need some logic to determine whether I should send a text or not. And I think that's probably good enough for now. I do have a whole bunch of other ideas about stuff I want to build into this, but no need to go too crazy just yet. Let's at least prove it out first. I think getting too far ahead of yourself is also a great way to, just keep the internal, your mental scope going and building more than you really need it to. Just focus on what's straight ahead, what you know, because if this is, something you're doing for work, inevitably there's going to be someone coming in and filling in way more details after the fact about stuff that, they only notice after you get it up and running the first time. So at least if your experience is anything like mine, and then that's when you get 4 new tickets. So with that said, I think this is enough to start moving forward. Even if I'm not going to write code right away, I can at least start asking these questions and getting answers. So if this were something entirely new to me, this is whenever I would start asking around, Okay, so what is a low blood sugar threshold? Well, I know that from, my personal experience now, but if I'm doing something for work and I have to build in some other clause, start asking questions. Then for some of these other things like how to connect to Dexcom or how to send text message alerts, this is whenever I start Googling, because as a senior engineer, I know that Google is a very helpful assistant to me. I think a lot of people who are young in their careers, especially developers, because often you're discouraged in school from having another resource next to you. You often are allowed phones or notes or things like that. So it feels like cheating to open up another tab and start Googling stuff. But the reality is, all of us are figuring things out and learning new stuff, and especially in technology where, you're often doing many of the same things in principle, but often with, different frameworks, different APIs, for different reasons. You're going to have to learn, how each wheel works, so to speak. You're not necessarily reinventing it every time, at least hopefully not, but you're figuring out, okay, so this is going to be a little different. And so it's perfectly normal to that. So this is whenever I would start Googling, Dexcom package, specifically, Node or Python or whatever I'm going to be working in. In this case, it's going to be Python, mainly because I kind of cheated a little bit because I found some of this stuff just from Googling way in the past. So if I look here, well, first of all, I'm not going to talk about this package yet, but I found something on, I want to say Hacker News a long time ago, about this Dexcom package that actually connects directly to their share service rather than using Dexcom's API, because I've looked at Dexcom APIs, their API documentation, and it seemed to do a lot more than what I wanted, and not exactly what I was looking for. But this seems to be a package that makes it super easy, where you log in, use one command, and then you get a dictionary of values that you can start making decisions based off of in this case. And so this will be exactly what I'm looking for. And rather than having to do a whole bunch of research into that, I'm just going to install this in a minute. And then same with SMS. That's something I've done many times throughout my career, is doing applications with SMS text messaging. And so I've always used Twilio. They have historically some of the best documentation of any software product I've ever used. So I'm a big fan. I think I still own some of their stock but I bought it because I love their product. So, guilty. Yeah. So because of that, I know what two components I'm going to use here. As we get a little bit further along in this project, and probably in another video, there may be pieces where I am Googling it, in which case I'll probably just speed that up as you see me clicking and through 4 or 5 pages of stuff. But in general, don't feel bad if you had no idea about any of this. I just do because of a mix of pure luck and past experience. So yeah, that's where I'm going with this. So I've got answers. So how to type better. I probably should go to sleep soon. That would probably help, and then pick up in the morning. But until then, how to connect to Dexcom. We're going to use the Dexcom package. And then how to send text message alerts. We're going to use Twilio, and they have a Python package as well. Makes it super easy to use their API. And then as far as what qualifies for a low blood sugar threshold, I'm going to look at one of two things. I'm going to say either 80 and down arrow, which you'll see a little bit more about that whenever we start using the package, or 70 and below any arrow. All right, so I'll spare you the details on that just yet, but we've got the 3 questions answered, and now it's time to start writing a bit of code. So if you were paying close attention on the opening screen with this Hello YouTube code, you might notice something a little different, which is I'm using this package called decouple, and I'm importing a config function. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to be using secrets within this app. So Twilio will have API keys that I don't want to share or hard code. In general, it is, I mean, you have to come up with a very specific situation where it's a good idea to put API keys, app secrets, or any sort of other hard coded like login, username, and especially passwords in your application. I'm never going to say never, but it's very rare that that's a good idea. So in general, you want to separate out your app secrets from your application code. Most languages have a way to do this. Often they're using a .env file, and you never commit that to your source code repository with Git, wherever it's hosted. That way you don't end up getting your secrets leaked, especially if you make your repo public or accidentally make it public. You can very easily end up with multi-$1,000 AWS bills or have people impersonating you. It just never goes well if you do that. So you're always better off creating a .env file, never checking it in, and then just to help people get started, you set up an .env like .example file, and this will give like some example values or the format. I just have some basic junk in here at first, but that's how I'm going to do that. So I make sure I don't accidentally show you any of the login information for this app. So very important thing to do for any project at all. And then there's a lot of ways to access the env variables. I mean, some languages have it built in. I just like the way that this decouple package has done it. I've used it on another project or two. And yeah, I just find it's easiest to have this. And anytime you have this variable, so series name is going to correspond to a string in here. So with that, I can then pull that variable in and then access it just as normal, and I don't have to worry about all those credentials in the application code. So we're going to use that. So I've already installed that. We're also going to install Dexcom, and I'll probably have to figure out this environment for fun. But then I'm also going to install Twilio. And with that, we can start coding. All right, so I'm going to start by copy and pasting the example recommended from the GitHub page for this package. Definitely type things out if you want to remember them a little bit better, but for this purpose, I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste it to make it easier. All right, so we've got the package info. I'm not outside the US, so I can delete that comment. And then for username and password, we're actually going to use the config names. So I'm going to do config Dexcom username, which is the environment variable I set up. And then for password, it's going to be same idea. Dexcom password. And then with any luck, this will actually run. Oh, I didn't fix that environment issue. Let me do that, and then I'll hit record again. All right, so I just ran the exact same command, and now it works, and I have no idea why. So I'm just happy it's working, and I'm going to get back to writing some of the code. So whenever I looked at the documentation for this, I double checked, and so this is the object as a whole, but what I'm looking for at first is this value. So if I start here and then run it, with any luck, all right, took a second, but I can now see right this second, my wife's blood sugar is 186, a little bit high, but we didn't eat all that long ago, so not terribly surprising. So with this, I now know I can access the access Dexcom, I can get a value, and now I can start writing some logic based off this value. So first, I'm going to return to the documentation, and there's a couple other things I want to look at here. One is, so this trend description will tell me, like a human readable version of what's going on. The trend arrow gives me, a nice 1 or 2 character explanation. I can also see the time that this was accessed. I don't know if that's the time that the reading took place or the time I make the request. So I'll try that out a few times, see what exactly it is. But yeah, I'll probably build a string here with the trend description, the trend arrow, and the time. So let's just build a little string. Fun. Let's see. Blood sugar is BG value. Trend is. So BG dot trend description. I'll put it inside of parentheses because that just makes it seem nicer, I think. Trend arrow at, and then what was it? BG dot time. Go back to the documentation. Yep, dot time. And then let's see if this works. It's a long, ugly string, but just for diagnostics. Okay, sweet. So this is at, okay, so this is at 22:15, so 10:15 p.m. local time. And it is 10:17 whenever I ran that. So this means the reading was here. So that's good to know, because now I can maybe use this to store a time for something. I don't know exactly what I'm going to use this for yet, but my mind is starting to go, starting to try and piece some things together. But yeah, so I've got this part done. Now the next bit will be Twilio. So I was going to type everything out and narrate it, but that was probably longer than it needed to be interesting. And in either case, I had the Twilio documentation broadcasted over my editor. So consider yourself spared from all of that anyway. Fortunately, the Twilio documentation makes it easy, so it wouldn't have actually been that long. We're just going to import this REST client. I changed the print to a variable. That way we can send it in the body of this text message. We just need a number that we're going to text it to, then the number we're going to send it from within Twilio. All of that is set up in the dashboard, as well as the account ID and the token. You get to generate those and keep them secret. So then with that, I'm going to run this, and with any luck, we're actually not going to see anything since we're not printing anything at the moment. But within a minute or so, usually a few seconds, I should get a buzz, which I just got on my watch, that I got a text message, and it is coming into Google Voice. And as you can see, I'm getting the same sort of, blood sugar message with a number, the trend is rising, all of that. So that is working perfectly. So then now the last change I'm going to make, because I don't want to get this every 5 minutes, because if you can imagine getting a notification every 5 minutes throughout the whole evening, doesn't sound like a great recipe for sleep. So I'm going to say if the value is less than 80, then go ahead and do that. Else, I will print something. All is clear for now. And then run this again. And I know it just worked. And now since her blood sugar is above 80, then I'm not going to get the notification. So now I can set this up to run. I'm going to set it up on a server. That way it's not dependent on my internet once again. It'll just be hosted, which that can be another video for fun. But I'm going to set that to run every 5 minutes after it updates. Then now I can get these messages in the middle of the night. Internet's down, anything like that, I don't have to worry. And then I'm going to go to bed, test it out tonight, and then hopefully tomorrow morning have enough energy and be able to type better. And then I'll look at some ways to extend this and talk about that in the next video, because in most cases in real life, you're never just going to write 20 lines of code and then you're all done with this project forever. Even if the fix is only 20 lines or the implementation is only 20 lines, you're probably going to get someone saying, hey, what if we added this feature? Or what if we made it look a little different? Something like that. So we'll go over how you can extend, refactor, all those things. And yeah, just learn how to do all those and how to think more like an engineer and not have it all be so scary. So hopefully this took a little bit of the fear out of something that seemed really crazy at first, especially if you've never worked with any of this before. So if you like it, leave a like, subscribe, all the stuff to hit, and then happy coding until then.